Welcome to Charged Up Studio Live, where small business owners get charged up for success. Are you a small business owner? Do you find yourself struggling through the many responsibilities that come with the title entrepreneur? Well, we're here for you. Charged Up Studio is hosted by Market Atomy LLC, your prescription for what we call OPA. What is OPA? It's when you become so overwhelmed with the confusion that comes with business ownership that you become paralyzed and ultimately avoid doing anything in hopes it will take care of itself, or you put it off till later. Does that sound familiar? I'm your host, Dan Olivo, and each week we bring a business professional eager to charge you up as they talk about the many things that keep you from moving forward with your small business. So are you ready to get charged up for success? Let's hit it. So welcome back once again to Charged Up Studio and another episode where small business owners can get information and tips needed to grow and scale their new businesses. I'm so excited to bring you today's episode of Charged Up Studio, Marketing Metamorphosis, Tracing the Evolution of Marketing. My guest brings to this episode a different approach to marketing your business. It's understanding where we started and where we are today. Let's give a big heartfelt welcome to Rick McCulloch with Amplify Your Profits. Welcome, Rick.
Well, thank you very much, Dana, for having me here. Really a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. I'm always excited to have new people on the podcast that can bring new ways of looking at things, new technology, just information. All right. So one of the things I like to start my podcast with all of my guests is to ask a very obscure question. So are you ready for this?
Well, I'm as ready as I ever can be.
Okay. If you were to go back in time to your younger self, what would you tell your younger self and at what age?
I would, to go back to a younger age, I would tell myself to surround myself with people, aside from my parents, who did a wonderful job of raising me. I would also surround myself with people a lot smarter than me, because that's how you grow, by surrounding yourself with people that know more than you do.
Very good. Very good. No, that's good. That's a good tip, so, okay. So let's get started. So one of the things that you talk about is everything you've learned about marketing is wrong. And I've heard this many times in other programs. Why don't you talk a little bit about why marketing is wrong, everything we've learned?
Okay. So back in the early days, back in late 1800s, early 1900s, it was pretty straightforward to actually present your case when you're trying to sell something to somebody or market to somebody. You would usually have some time to actually state your case, why we're better than this or better than that, or you'd have some time to actually let people know what made you stand out. And you maybe had an hour, half an hour to an hour. Well, often you could do it in maybe less time. But what happened after that, there was a big major shift that occurred in 1945 because of a major incident that happened at that time. And it's the most significant change or significant event in marketing history. And that was called the advent of television. So what happened with the advent of television is now with television, there were only about 3 or 4 major stations back then. But the thing is, you could reach just about every living person in the country with a television ad. because up till then had been restricted to some newspaper ads or maybe a little bit of radio and that stuff. But television really opened up the size of your audience, and so to reach that vast audience, of course, television was very expensive. Even back then, for about a 2-minute spot, you were looking at about $4,000. Even back then, that was considered a bargain. That was in those dollars today. That's not extrapolating today's dollars, but those dollars back then were like $4,000. But then it became so popular that what happened is that a lot of businesses, a lot of the ads became extremely expensive, and for a lot more money, you were lucky to even get 30 seconds of an audience attention. And in that period of time, you could not explain what made you stood apart. You could not explain why you were better than somebody else, or you had no time to state your case. All you had time for was a really big headline saying we're better than them, we're better than their competition.
Right.
And you could say things like, we're better than things go better with Coke, or Pepsi-Cola would come along with similar jingle jargon. So that's right. What happened. And so we only had a limited amount of time.
Yeah. Well, and then back there, the audience was not as discriminate when they, when they saw advertisements. If they saw something, it sounded good to them, they just, go out. Now we've got so much competition and things like that, our audience members are more discriminate, and they'll go in and do their own research. And if you say that you're better than somebody, or something like that, they're going to go and they want to back it up. And if you don't have that backup, chances are you're going to lose them, right?
That's part of it. But then what happened is during that period of time, we had the development of what we call CNR advertising, which meant creativity and repeat, create and repeat, create, repeat. And so things go better with Coke. By the time somebody heard it for the 800th time, you had no other choice when you thought about soft drink. That's all that's stuck in your head.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. So you sent me some questions here, and let's just start going through, some of these questions. What is the number one problem most businesses have right now?
When I talk to a potential prospect or an existing client, and I ask them, what is your biggest problem? They will tell me, I want more leads, I want more customers, I want more clients, I want more patients. And it seems to be a struggle. But as you mentioned, the competition is fairly fierce out there. And so to try and get more clients it could be a big struggle with them. But part of the problem is most businesses don't have time to actually focus on marketing. So they don't really pay much attention to it. And therefore, and just by default, they lose out to people who will take the time to do it.
Yes, no, that's true. And, and then when we start hitting these rough patches with recession and everything, the first thing they do is cut back on the marketing and sales, which is not what you cut back on,
No, it's the last thing you should cut back on.
Yeah. So what are the typical symptoms that people experience with this problem?
Typical symptoms would be lack of money, lack of clients, as I said, and lack of sales. They feel a lot of stress, and that reflects back on their home life as well. Because having a good business is not, it can't isolate that from your personal life. So no. It can affect your health. It can affect your. It can ultimately lead to things as severe as business failure, bankruptcy. It's really very stressful, creates a lot of anxiety in a person, and they tend to make a lot more mistakes to basically grab at any shiny object they see out there that can help them, they think might help them, and so they end up spending more money. And then you realize, they listen to some guru who thinks they know they should be posting more on Facebook or something like that, and that may not be the answer. So they just take it, they grasp at straws to actually find out how they can actually recover, and rather than talking to a good strategist.
Right. No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because being a strategist, this is one of the things that I work with a lot of these companies on, not necessarily just the marketing, but I work with them on a total strategic plan for their company. But what, I fully agree with what you're saying is they tend to bleed money in their company. And this is the hard-earned money. This is money they've taken out of their homes. They've taken out of their 401ks, especially small businesses who are self-funding, and they're throwing money into a business that they really don't know how to run. A lot of these small business owners, they go into business because they have a good product or service, thinking that that good product or service will sell itself. It doesn't work that way. And that's where marketing comes in, and we won't talk about the purpose of marketing, but what we should talk about are the common mistakes that people make when they try and avoid doing their marketing. What are some of the problems that they, what are some of the common mistakes that they do?
Common mistakes would be, they would, as I mentioned, they might spend money in the wrong things. They might try and listen to what they think the latest fad is, as far as the way to get more clients. They might be looking for. They don't reach out to enough of their existing clients. They don't reach out to. They don't get enough referrals. They basically, and I'm just going to grab something here. I just want to make sure I cover this really well, because I think it's important to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that a lot of people don't forget is in order to stand out, you have to have what I call a market dominant position. It doesn't mean you have to be as well known as Pizza Hut, or at least Pizza Hut or Domino's Pizza or FedEx or Walmart. But in order to stand apart, you have to be very specific about your product and your target audience. A lot of people try and go after everybody rather than focus on their ideal client. Because if you go after everybody, you get nobody. You have to really be focused on your niche. And a lot of people don't do that. So that's one of the biggest mistakes. So basically, one of the things that happens too is a lot of businesses ignore the fact that their inside reality may not match the external reality, the perception. What I mean by inside reality are the things that actually you're really good at. Like maybe a good plumber, I'm a good electrician, or maybe I'm a good healthcare professional, or maybe I'm a renovator, or a good day cleaner. I know what I'm really good at, and I'm very, very clear about that in my own mind. But we forget sometimes to express that to our existing clientele and our existing clients, and also to our prospects. If I could read a short story to that really demonstrates this very, very well. And it's not just a matter of being different, it's a matter of the perception. The perception is everything. So yeah. A good example of that would be, and I went back quite a few years before this major change happened in marketing at 45. This goes back to prior to that. But kind of one of my most trusted mentors who died before I was born. I read some of his material, and he became the father of modern advertising. His name is Claude Hopkins, and one of his clients had a real problem with their brewery. They basically were going to go out of business. And so what he did is he interviewed the brewmaster, the owner of the company, and he found out all the different things they do to make the perfect bottle of beer. And so he basically told the story, the type that least they made, where they got the water, and how they processed the beer. And then he wrote an ad around that, and his sales went through the roof. And he went back to the brewer and said, "Well, now I think we're going on road to success now, and this is because of the story you're telling about what you do." And the brewery owner said, well, what you're telling in the story is not any different. Everybody else does the same thing. But he said, you were the first to tell the story about and that set you apart just by telling the story.
Yeah. And right now, everything is all about, the story that you tell, and that story has to resonate. It has to be credible. It has to be, something that is transparent. And it has to resonate with the people that you're talking to. I don't know how many times I've told my clients, or mentored my clients on, your why. Why do you do what you do? Because that is what's going to draw people to you. Is you need to understand and be able to clearly communicate what is your passion? Why do you do what you do? Because that's what needs to go through into your marketing messages and things like that. So yeah, it's not as though it's anything new. It's understanding as small business owners how you attract and convert those customers or those prospects. And it doesn't stop there, because once you have that contract, it doesn't stop there, because now you have to make sure that you're able to service that contract. So they're not going to just decide, oh, you're not meeting what you promised. You're not delivering what you promised. I'm just going to go somewhere else and get what I need, So that's what a lot of these small business owners, what they run into is not only trouble attracting and converting, but keeping those clients.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So what attributes are more important than price to people, for people to buy?
Okay. Attributes would be more important than price would be. And this is a big one. A lot of people don't get this. When I talked to somebody about this at a trade show one time, he didn't get it right away until I explained it to him. He said the most important attribute of your product is believe it or not, it's actually the quality of the product you have. How well does the product you have solve a problem for me? That is number one. If it doesn't solve a problem for me, then it has no relevance to me. And I'm going to look somewhere else to find that solution to that problem. And the next one, can you deliver? Can you deliver on that promise? And a lot of times people will say, well, you kind of hinted that a minute ago. He says, you can have a really good product, but if you can't deliver on it, then that doesn't do you any good either. I mean, you may have the best widget in the world, but if you can't deliver it in a timely fashion, that can be a problem. So another thing would be being responsive to problems or issues. That would be another thing. How responsive are you? And your terms of service. Like sometimes just having a payment plan can make a big difference. And then having good customer service can be a very important part of it. And knowing that you're in good hands with the person who's helping you, they're going to continue to service you, give you good service, and they're going to provide a product that continues to solve that problem for them. I think those are, and prices, don't get me wrong, price can be important, but unless you have those other things in place, price doesn't matter. And also, here's another thing that a lot of people don't understand. People do not buy on price. They buy on the value they get for the price they pay.
Yeah. A perfect example would be, Apple computers. They've always been more expensive in the technology lineup of personal computers, but there's a reason for it, and there's a lot of benefits. Well, let's talk a little bit about the difference between attributes and benefits. Okay. Okay.
So that was a question you're directing to me, like television.
That's what I'm directing to you. Yes, because we talk about attributes, and then we talk about benefits.
So a feature, that to me, that'd be another way to look at it.
Features, yeah.
A feature would be a synonym for that. So, like for instance, if I have a system that actually provide, basically it has the, like if I'm buying a car, a good example that would be an automobile. If I'm buying a vehicle, and I'm looking for specifically a car that goes fast or basically has good performance on the highway for safety. One of the things, a feature of the car might be that it has a reasonably good sized engine in it, and that it has good performance. The benefit is that it's going to help me be safer on the road and help me to get me where I want to go more comfortably, me and my family. That's the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
The feature was the engine, and a color might be considered a feature, and that feature might be insignificant to some people. Some people don't care about color, but perhaps if you're buying the car for a family, maybe the family and the wife does care about it. So if you're buying a car that has a nice color to it, nice appeal to it, it helps with you look better in front of your wife and in front of your potential and in front of your neighbors. So it helps with your, I guess another way to look at it is it helps with your status, having a better color, for instance. Having certain types of seats in the car, that might be considered a feature, but the benefit is that you're going to be more comfortable.
Okay, yeah. And that's important to point out. It's, the benefits are what you want as far as, how can I say that? How do you say that? Okay. Your feelings, how it makes you feel and, and things like that. Whereas the features are what are put in place to help you feel that way.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people will tell you they buy based on logic. Well, no, they don't. They buy based on, people can buy on logic, they buy based on emotion.
Yeah.
And so they may justify based on logic at the end. But if you buy something new simply because of emotion, a good example, now you have to justify that expensive car to your wife.
Yeah. And not just that you going through a midlife crisis here either.
Yeah, that's right.
That is not a attribute or a benefit or anything like that. Might be to that one person, but anyway. So let's talk a little bit about operationally. What is the single most important component of running a business, a small business?
Okay, operationally, I would talk about, there's multiple different components to running the business. And the one I think I point out a lot to people is that within an organization, and this includes, even if you're a solopreneur, you still have to have this, it's called communication. Communication is often considered, a communication department is considered an actual division of a company, because with good communications, your finances, your marketing, your customer interaction, your employee interaction, and the other systems you put in place to run the company won't work unless you are communicating what your policies and procedures are from the top. The only thing more important than the communication is the executive position, but he has to be very clear in how he's communicating what he wants. If he's not, then there's going to be a state of chaos and confusion for everybody. So I'd say that's definitely number one. And so that's definitely very important from an operational point of view. And part of that is having good systems in place. And part of that is also having a good internal culture. If you don't have a good internal culture, then it's going to be very difficult for your employees to get motivated or feel fulfilled. And that's why a lot of businesses are finding their employees are leaving in droves, because they don't feel fulfilled. So if you don't have not good operationally from the point of view of culture, then you're going to have unhappy employees, and unhappy employees translates into unhappy customers.
That's true. That's true. So what is the current marketing model broken? How, why is it currently broken?
Well, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of our conversation here, it's because of what happened in 1945 and because of what happened with television. So what happened is, and just repeat exactly what I said, but just to summarize, we've generated what they call these slogans and jingles, and we basically use the same old platitudes that everybody else uses, and we're not really clear about what makes us different. Like what happens very often, like for example on websites, is everybody is saying the same thing, and you're not standing apart. They're using the same jingles, same expressions, and there's a test for that, and that's called the "I would hope so" test. So if you look at if somebody shows you their website and says we're the best at this or the best of that, and we provide great service, well, the test is, if it doesn't pass the I would hope so test, it's not going to really attract anybody else. So I have to say, if it's just the same as what everybody else says, it's not going to help anybody, and it's not going to help your business grow. You have to have something that really stands apart, and there's ways to do that.
Right, and there's ways to back it up, like we talked about earlier. If you can't back up what you're saying, okay, you're what I like to call, especially today when we're talking, a great deal of our marketing is done digitally, either through Facebook, social media, or whatever, through email, channels, things like that. And I use a term for, if you can't back it up, it's a sociopathic effort. Okay, you're touting your what you can do, everything that you can do, but you're not backing it up. And in order for your recipients to be able to feel confident that you're going to deliver on what you promise, you've got to deliver something that's going to make you feel more confident. Is there a guarantee? Is there, a warranty? Or, how are you going to make them feel more comfortable? Case studies. If they can see case studies, live case studies on your website, if they can see that you have done this for other people successfully, we're talking about reviews.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. So what I like to say is not everybody can do what you do. Back to what I was saying earlier, not everybody can do what you do, but everybody can say what you say. And so even if it's not hard, because a lot of people just use the same material from other websites, and they might use the same testimonials, they might use the same comments or same reviews, but if they're not really showing themselves to be specifically different in a way that actually is relevant to your client, then that basically is not going to resonate with them, and they're going to look somewhere else.
Right, exactly. So you talk about one valuable free action, VFA. What are you talking about there?
Okay, one free action, let me just refer to something here. I just want to quickly make sure I get this right here, but one of the free actions I would say is fire your ego. Because a lot of us in business have and it's okay to have some ego. That's allowed to some extent, but it can get in the way of actually getting help where you need it. Because one of the big problems, it's actually a blessing and a curse. One of the blessing of being an entrepreneur is that we tend to be very visionary. We tend to come up with great ideas about helping other people. But then the dark side of that is that we figure we're the only ones that can do it. And so we try and brand ourselves and say this, and we try and make ourselves the best out there in the eyes of our client. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, extremely expensive to do, because we have this ego that we want to stand out really well, but that gets really expensive. So the way to solve that is to really to show you, Richard, all you really need to do is to, as you talked about it before, when you prove that you can do something, the way you prove you can do something before you even engage with a client, you have to show, you have to do something for them that can prove that you can do what you said you can do. So so I would say do that before you start trying to brand yourself, because it's going to be a lot easier to do that. If you're really good at what you do, you can prove it by just offering, it could be a free or low cost offering that proves your worth to your potential client.
So is that what you're talking about when we talk about valuable free resource?
That would be more of a, yes. So basically, I would say sorry, that was more of an action. That's something you could do as an action. But
yeah, that's what I had asked, but it sounded like it moved into your resource when you start talking about, a free giveaway or something like that.
No, well, no, that's, so just to be clear, and sorry, I maybe misunderstood your question a little bit, maybe some clarification there. So part of the resource I'm really talking about is I would actually have them go to my website, attractmoreprofits.com, and actually there's a place there where you can actually put your name and email, and you'll get a copy of my book that you see behind me, and also give you a short video of some of the things we've been talking about here as well.
Okay. All right. And then what is valuable free tip?
So all my years of experience, and this is something I learned from one of the most successful negotiators in the world. He was a advisor to 3 U.S. presidents. His name is Bernard Baruch. His last name Baruch, and he was very good at walking to boardrooms and settling disputes in boardrooms. And somebody asked him one day, "How did you do that?" And he wouldn't answer initially because he was trying to protect his basically intellectual property by not revealing how he solved problems. But as he got closer to older years and near his deathbed, somebody asked him again, what was that thing you did that got everybody to talk to each other? And this applies to marketing as well as the boardroom. It applies to life, it applies to your family, it applies to business, applies to every part of your life. And he said, the 12 most powerful words in marketing and in your business and your life are find out what people want and then show them how to get it.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're coming up on the end of another podcast here. And if you would like, Rick, can you tell people how they can get a hold of you?
Okay, the best way is to go to my website, attractmoreprofits.com. And they can also find me on LinkedIn. So look for WIIFM on LinkedIn. And that WIIFM, by the way, just as another side tip, stands for What's in It for Me, because it's everybody's favorite radio station. So when you look for my website, or not my website, my LinkedIn profile, after the LinkedIn, the / after that is WII. FM, and that's the way to find me on LinkedIn. And then also, if you want to book a call with me, the best place to do that is to go to my website. There's a place on there you can click a link to actually book a call with me.
All right, very good, Rick. Thank you. So that concludes our podcast for today. Please leave a review on any of the streaming platforms you're listening to us on, or go to our Charged Up Studio Facebook page and leave a review there. Charged Up Studio is a product of Market Academy. the e-learning system designed specifically with the micro business owner in mind. For more information and to register for our many courses, go to marketatomy.academy. That's marketatomy.academy. Until next week, go out and have another charged up week. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you very much for having me here, Dan. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Charged Up Studio Live, the podcast with you, the small business owner in mind, with your host, Dana Olivo. Join us every Tuesday as we bring you valuable tips and insights into many of the topics you don't know about growing a successful business. Please leave us a review on any of the streaming platforms you are listening to, or visit us on the YouTube or Facebook page and leave a review or subscribe so you don't miss another episode. You can also support us through Patreon by visiting our website, chargedupstudio.live, and click on the Patreon link. Until next week, go out and have a charged up week.